Hey, everybody. It is Peter here from Strong Healthy Women, and welcome to Talking Wellbeing TV, where we share hints, tips, and advice about the foundations of wellbeing. And we are here today for part 2 of the Healthy, Happy Tummy. And with me today is Ange Sinclair, the digestive detective. That's a mouthful and a half. Hey, Ange, how you going?
I'm good, Peter. How are you going? Is it your birthday today?
It is my birthday today, yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So everybody's been going, oh, I hope you've had a good day doing nothing that you love, that all the things that you love doing and rah, rah, rah. And I've gone, look, it was a work day for me. So, I was up bright and early, did 2, fitness sessions in the virtual studio, and it's been go. Look, I did take a break during the middle of the day, but we've got more training to do yet. So I didn't even think to organise anybody else, but that's okay too. I love doing it, so that's all that matters.
And that's right. Birthdays are what you choose to do, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. I really love that topic that we talked about on Monday, Ange. It was awesome.
Yeah, no,
we were talking about. Yeah. So it was great. So just what goes on in our tummy and the effects that happen from food, and how our brain and our tummy have this bi-directional chat that goes on with one another, and how it's important to have variety. And we just got started, and it was like, oh, time's up. We need to go. So I thought we might start today off by talking about a really interesting topic, I think, which is the difference between probiotics and prebiotics, because I think those two things together we can get very confused about. And also it sort of like fits with why that variety of food is so important to us. So do you want to start off by talking about, what's the difference between probiotics and prebiotics?
So there's a big thing happening right now called probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. So basically, postbiotics, just to confuse everybody, is the pre and the probiotics together, and that's how they get postbiotics. So we're not going to talk about that today, but that's going to be a hot topic. Mark my words, that's going to be a trending thing in the next 6 to 8 months. We're going to be talking about postbiotics. So you've heard it here first. So prebiotics. I like to liken prebiotics and probiotics, and my little story around that is it's like if you live in a seaside village, the probiotics are the people who come in, they're the tourists who come for the summer. They come in, they change the environment, they spend all their money, and then they leave. So that's what a probiotic is. It doesn't set up shop. There's this real misalignment that probiotics come in and they replenish our gut with gut bacteria. They do, but only for the time that you take them. Once you stop taking them, between 7 and 14 days later, they're all gone. Whereas the prebiotics are the people who live in the town, and they just add a little bit to the economy every single day. And they just top up what's happening at home every day. So they feed what's happening in your gut. So essentially they are a type of dietary fibre that feed our good gut bacteria, and they have no real benefit to us, but your gut bacteria really loves them.
Well, I think they would have a good effect on us, because if our tummy loves them, then we would feel happy. So
no, totally. But we get the nutrients from them as well. But if we were just getting the nutrients from them, so not every fibre is a prebiotic fibre. So that's something to remember. That everything's not necessarily, all fibres we eat aren't necessarily prebiotic. So there's some misconception about that. And so essentially, if our good bacteria produce nutrients for our colon cells, which then leads to a healthier digestive system as well. So by feeding those good bacteria, they then flourish, and then they feed our colon cells. And they do that with things called short-chain fatty acids. And those short-chain fatty acids basically become the fuel for our colon cells. So our colon is 1 cell thick. So you can imagine a skin is like 7 cells thick. Well, your colon wall's 1 cell thick. So by feeding your bacteria that prebiotic all the time, that's giving a constant nourishment to that little cell that's just 1 cell thick. So we need to have that all the time, you know, and they make things like butyrate, acetate, and propionate, and they're the fuels that feed our colon cells. So we need them all the time. So for us to be eating those prebiotics every day is a really great thing. And I encourage that. That's the thing I encourage the most.
Okay, and just remind everybody what the colon is.
So the colon is your large bowel, basically. So it's the bit where your the food comes through your small intestines and it gets broken down into your large intestines, and that's where you produce your poo from, and it goes all the way around your colon and out your rectum, pretty much. And so that's where that's where our bacteria is supposed to live, in our large bowel or in our colon. But sometimes that bacteria can move up into our small bowel, and that's when people get things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is not very much fun.
No. Okay. All right. So now you mentioned fiber with your prebiotics.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about fiber then. So what's a fibrous food, as an example?
So not necessarily fibrous food. So all fruit and vegetables, grains and nuts can all be classified as fiber. They are classified as protein and carbohydrates as well, but mostly they're classified as fiber. And so we've got two lots of fiber that they think: soluble and insoluble fiber. So soluble means it can break down in our body, whereas insoluble fibers, when it goes through it, it's only impacted by our gut bacteria. And so you need both of those fibers, and prebiotic can be both of those fibers. So basically, the fibers in the foods that are prebiotic feed basically the bacteria and not necessarily us. We feel good when we eat them, and most of them are yummy foods. They don't really benefit us as such. And it was once thought, Peter, that prebiotic foods were things like asparagus, garlic, onion, Jerusalem artichoke or artichoke, whatever you call them, those dandelion roots, those sorts of things. But now we know that that's not necessarily true. There's a whole stack of foods, and I'll put the link into the at the bottom where you can download the sheet. And there's things like apples, strawberries, cabbage, beetroots. There's a whole lot of foods that are really good for our gut bacteria, and I encourage people to eat them often. So I think that's a good thing for people to remember.
So just in simple terms, the prebiotic is the thing that is just going to be slowly improving our tummy health.
Yes.
And it's there for the long haul. Whereas the probiotic, it's only there for the time that you're taking it, and then it does a hike out of there.
Yeah, and probiotics change the environment of our gut. They change the pH, whereas prebiotics actually feed our good gut bacteria. So there's a little bit of a difference. And I guess the thing about probiotics too is lots of people think, okay, well, I won't take a probiotic. I'll just take sauerkraut and I'll just drink kefir and all of those sorts of things. They are not necessarily the same as a commercially available probiotic, because one is mostly their wild species or commercially grown species that don't necessarily have the same impact to your gut bacteria that a commercial one would, because the commercial ones are packed with you can tell the exact amount of bacteria in the jar. So after the 40 or 50 days that they have on the expiry date, at the end of that time, there'll still be that many in the jar. With sauerkraut that you're making at home or that you're buying, you don't necessarily know that. So it's not a therapeutic dose. It's great to have, and they're yummy, and they do lots of other things, but they're not necessarily a therapeutic dose of a probiotic, and that's important.
Okay.
And I think, can I
All
say one more thing about the probiotics? The other thing is probiotics to me is like going to a library. So if you go into the library and you want a book on crime fiction, you're just not going to go into the library and pull the first book off. So people do that with probiotics. They go into the shop and just grab a probiotic and think that's going to be okay. But there's been so much research done now. You want the probiotic that does the right thing for the right job. So again, let's relate it back to the library. If I want a crime book, I go to the crime section and pull out the crime book. If I want a probiotic for allergies, I go to the thing that's got the specific strain that's been tested and clinically trialed for allergies. And I think because people will take probiotics and go, they don't really work very well. But maybe it's because we haven't got the right one for the right job, as my husband would say.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And so do you recommend then having a probiotic as well as eating all the foods that are prebiotics as well too?
I think
once you know the condition of your gut type of thing.
Yeah. I think probiotics can be problematic for people because with probiotics, if you have that imbalance in your small intestines or you've got gut bacteria that's not as balanced as it could be, having a probiotic can actually make you feel worse. You might feel more. So sometimes they're not good. So if you ever take a probiotic and you do feel worse, there's something else going on for you. But most of the time, I say to people, you don't need to take probiotics all the time unless you're dealing. I think if you're dealing with a condition, you should take the right probiotic. But if you're doing it for general health, you could take a round of probiotics once a quarter and then just top yourself up, change the environment. I don't think you have to take them ongoing for a couple of reasons. I don't think we have enough research around probiotics to be continually taking them. I think the science it's good, but it's not
inclusive.
Yeah, and it's not as easy as let's because we think we know what's in there, but we don't know for sure yet. I mean, there's lots of stuff that is unnamed and we don't quite know what's there, like the viruses and the other things that we don't quite know what's there because we can't test them and measure them yet, but we know they're there. So taking something long term, I wonder about the effects of that when we don't know for sure. So I'm always cautious around probiotics. And my thing is I would rather you eat the food than take the pill.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, brilliant. And so let's delve in then to some of the foods that are good for us that are prebiotic.
So there's lots. So things that we talked about before, garlic, onion, asparagus, artichokes, chicory roots, dandelion roots, they're ones that you go, they're not so fantastic. But there's things like sweet potato, raspberries, strawberries, cabbage, broccoli, lots of nuts. There's about 5 or 6 nuts that are prebiotic fibers. There are grains that are prebiotic fibers. So rye is fantastic as a prebiotic fiber. And for gluten-free people, sorghum, those sorts of things. And I don't love this, but there is some commercial cereals that are also prebiotics. They're not ones that I recommend often, but for some people it's a matter of convenience. So we go with that occasionally. But there's plenty. There's I think I've got a 2-page list of different ones, and they're finding more all the time that they test and we can, put into our diet.
I think really to summarize all of that, Ange, it really comes down to if you eat real wholesome food, it's healing on your body.
Absolutely.
And it helps your body recover. That's really the crux of it. So how does this all tie in then to the variety that we were talking about on Monday? So we know that we're going to get some prebiotics that are going to help our gut out. And then if we eat the same thing all the time, then we're probably missing some nutrients, and that's probably not so good for our tummy as well. And so talk to us a little bit about that, why that variety works.
So it's
so well.
it's about the nutrients. You're absolutely right about that, but it's also really about the phytochemicals. You know, we know there's about 8,000 phytochemicals in fruit and vegetables that we eat, and we know that they all do slightly different things. Like we know that carotenoids help with our eyes, and there's several different carotenoids, and we know that there's lots of different ones. I can't even remember all their names. Flavonoids and polyphenols. So polyphenols are one that you hear often now. It's a big buzzword at the minute, and they're generally the remember we talked about the colours the other day. So they're generally the red, blue, and purple ones. And they supercharge your gut bacteria. And we know that they help reduce the risk of cancer. They help with eye health. They help with a whole stack of things. Brain health. So it's really important to eat those and get the colours, because then you can be, when you're just doing that little segment, you're only feeding such a small segment. And sometimes in those foods, they may not be prebiotic foods that you're feeding your gut bacteria. So potato, I can't remember whether potato's on the list or not actually, but just say it's not on the list. If you only eat potato, you're really not going to be able to get prebiotics from just one thing. And there's different types of prebiotics, and on Friday we'll talk about resistant starch, and it's a type of prebiotic. So there's different sort of types of prebiotic, and you want to try and get as many different ones as you can, because again, they all do different things in your body. You know, some of them give you the fuel to make short chain fatty acids. Some of them change the environment. So there's all different things. They wear all different hats. So I think it's important to get all of them at once.
I just thought of a question. Interesting question. I'm sure that I'll get asked this. So I'm going to ask. Okay, so we have green apples, red apples, yellow apples, but when you peel them, they're all white inside.
Yeah.
So I would say that the green apple is green and the red apple is red, and the you know, et cetera, so that they would fit into those categories. But when you peel them and you don't eat the peel, are they still classed as a red food?
Well, they would be
because
classed
you're only eating the white.
No, and this is my thing. My thing is eat the peel, because it's really good fibre, and
totally.
And most of the nutrient is in the peel. Most of the vitamin and polyphenols is in the peel. I watched a guy in this show, it would have been a good 10 years ago now. He was an anti-aging specialist, and he only eats the skin and throws the apple away, which I think is crackers. But he's eating it from the perspective that it'll help him in the anti-aging aspect. So no, I think with apples, even though they're three different colours, you're getting three different phytonutrients, because it's not necessarily just the colour on the outside. It's the type of apple, it's the way it's grown. It's all those things. And that's what I say to people when they're trying to get colour. If you're aiming for 30 to 40 different fruits and veg a week, if you have those three apples, that's three colours. You're already halfway there. So I think that's really good. And my thing is capsicum. That's my
totally.
Go-to
orange, yellow, red, green,
and black. There's even a black capsicum. So I say to people, that's 4 colours. That's if you had one meal where you had one capsicum and used half of it, you've got 6 colours right there, or 5 colours right there. So I think that's really important for people to think. If you always love a red delicious, change it up sometimes and get a pink lady or a granny smith. And I say that to them, and that's how in clinic when I say to people, hear me in your ear at the fruit shop, get the green apple, buy the yellow kiwi fruit, buy the red onion. So I think that's really important to remember. And I have people ring me from the thing and they go, all I can hear is you in my ear.
Yeah. I get told that by my ladies in regards to water. It's like, drink more water.
Yeah.
Keep drinking water. What are you doing? You need more water.
Yeah, and look, water's a hard thing for a lot of people. So and it's hard for me. Water is one thing that I struggle with. So I'm on board with all those people, but I've got lots of strategies in place for myself around that. I have an app on my phone. I would flavor it because it's easier for me to do. So I think that with all things, even getting more colors in, it's just about doing that graph we talked at, the little exercise with the writing down the thing and the circling. That's a really good thing when you see it, because you can't unsee it. You can look at yours when you've done it and go, oh dear, I'm missing a couple of greens, I'm missing purple, I'm not having purple at all. And we know that purple and blue are good for our brain health, so we want to include those when we're doing it. So it's a really good way to go, I can see where I'm falling down, how can I add that in? So I think that's important.
Yes, totally is. We start our 28-day transformation on the 7th of September, and some of the ladies have, did the fast action stuff, and they're already in the group. And so in the Insiders yesterday, I said, I shared our live on Monday, and I said, okay, today it's declaring day. So what colours have you had for breakfast? What colours did you have for lunch? What colours did you have for dinner? So it is. And I went, I'll start off. This is what I've had so far. So it is a really, really great way of looking at whether you are getting that variety, which means you're getting more nutrients, which means you're feeding your tummy the right things. And so it's going to be happier with you.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the things I missed out when we were talking about prebiotic foods and stuff, beans and legumes are really, really fantastic prebiotics. And I don't know about you, but I hear people say all the time, oh, when I have beans, my belly's really bad and I can't have them. They just make me feel uncomfortable. Well, one of the biggest reasons for that, there's two reasons that happens, is one, because most people don't prepare them properly. They just, put the beans in a pot and try and cook them, especially if they're not used to cooking beans. The second thing is if they're doing a bean out of a tin. In Australia, when we get tins, the tins are pressure cooked. They're not soaked properly. And then people pour that whole tin into their dinner and they're not rinsing them properly. So they're getting all that FODMAP stuff, the oligosaccharides that should be taken off, that make them bloaty and farty, and they're putting it into their dinner. The other thing is, when most people have beans when they haven't had them for a long time, they'll get bean chili, or they'll get a bean enchilada, and it'll be this big, and then they'll eat that. And so now what you know about prebiotics, if you eat a big bean enchilada, it's feeding your gut bacteria. And what happens when they get fed? They go, woohoo, let's eat this. And they run around like crazy. They gorge themselves, they fill up with gas, and then they fart. And when they fart, you're full of gas. So
you're going to
yeah, so consequently then they are uncomfortable and they are full of gas. So my thing with people with beans is have that variety, because there's hundreds of different coloured beans. And
definitely.
And when you start eating them, start with a tablespoon in a week on the first day, and then every second day do another tablespoon, because after the course of a week, your belly will get used to them if you do it incrementally. But if you stop and have a couple of weeks off, you're back to the start, because your bacteria need to have that constant feeding. I've got one lady at the minute that we've just got, she can't have any things. So we're trying legume chips. So they're red lentil chips. And so she can have one red lentil chip, but if she forgets 2 days later and doesn't have it on the 5th day, she said, oh my God, I'm terrible. So we're training her belly to just take a little bit at a time to get used to the lentils. And that's the same with beans. If you can't tolerate beans to start with lentils, because they're a lot softer and a lot gentler and don't have that same amount of oligosaccharides in them as a bean does. So if anybody says to me, what should I do to really supercharge my gut health? It's legumes and beans.
Yeah, totally. And so with those, it's better if you can cook them yourself. Yeah. But if you are going for the tin, I always say put them in a drainer and watch them bubble. And it just keeps bubbling. And so the objective is just keep rinsing them until you've got no more bubbles left.
Correct. Yeah. And the really important thing to remember if you're cooking them yourself is they must be in acidulated water. So you must put apple cider vinegar in with them, or lemon juice, or whey from yogurt I sometimes use, because legumes and stuff are pretty clever. In the wild, they have that protective coating and those lectins and phytates to stop insects from eating them. And so that's why they're on there, because it protects them. So we need to get rid of that protection so we can eat them without the same side effect. So it's interesting because not many people know that tin ones are pressure cooked into the tin. So I think that's really useful for people to know.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything you want to wrap up with, Ange?
Oh, no, look, I think with the prebiotics, I think it's really important, like we've talked about already, have that variety. And I say to people, if you can eat 10 prebiotics a day, you're doing a really good job. And they're easy foods. When you see the list, you'll go, oh, my God, I'm probably eating half a dozen to a dozen of these every day anyway. So I think it's really good to see the list and see what you can add to your diet that you're not already doing, and mixing it up a bit, not having the same prebiotics all the time. I think that's really important.
Awesome. So what we want you to do, ladies, is from Monday, you're writing down what you eat and you're starting to mark off what colours you're eating and look for your gaps. And Ange is going to put up the link for the list of all the prebiotic foods. So you'll be able to look at that and be able to then look at what you're eating and go, wow, I've already got most of this happening. I can just add a few more things in and I'm on my way to a healthy, happy tummy.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. All right, ladies, we shall be back on Friday and we will be talking about part 3 of the healthy, happy tummy. Thanks for joining us, Ange.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
See you, everybody. Bye. Bye.